And with us on the broadcast, live from Washington, D.C., is Rafael S. Cohen, senior political scientist at RAND. Thanks very much for being here. A lot to dissect and unpack here. Let's first talk about that statement, that lengthy document that the White House has come up with. It basically puts together all the past statements of President Trump on Iran's nuclear weapon program. What exactly is the White House, according to you, trying to communicate here? What is Trump trying to do?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on. What I think the Trump administration is trying to do is push back on criticism that Trump has been getting, particularly from voices on the right. People like Tucker Carlson, who has criticized Trump's hawkish stance vis-a-vis Iran, saying that that's not in the definition of America First. Trump has pushed back on that. He said he has campaigned on preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. This goes back actually as far back as his 2016 campaign, when he was criticizing the Obama nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, otherwise known as the JCPOA. And he's remained relatively consistent since then. So what Trump is doing with this set of documents is saying, it's not me who's changed my tune. I've been for this all along, and this remains American policy going forward.
Right. Trump's early departure from the G7 summit has left a big question mark on what lies ahead now, and all eyes on Donald Trump. He says that the reason was much bigger than a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. What do you make, first, of his early departure and then of his statement there?
So we don't know the actual cause of what President Trump had heard that prompted him to leave early. We do know that the Iranians issued statements last night saying that they were going to launch something big against Israel, saying it was going to be a night of continuous bombardments. That actually never actually materialized in full form. There were smaller scale barrages, but whether it's because of Israeli action or because of Trump's signaling, that never materialized. So we don't fully know that. Now, what we do know is that the Trump administration has a couple big choices ahead of it. It can either push for a new nuclear deal, and this one hopefully fix some of the problems with the JCPOA, that Obama-era deal that I mentioned. When talks about the problem with that original deal was it had sunset provisions, that the nuclear agreement was going to end. This is where that clip that President Trump said earlier that he wants a permanent end, that's what he's referring to probably there. The alternative option that President Trump may be weighing is whether or not the United States should get directly involved. There's been a lot of speculation recently that to deal with some of the Iranian nuclear facilities, particularly the site at Fordow, which is deep underground, that would require American assistance. And so that's also one of the potential policy reasons that may be prompting President Trump to return to the United States early.
Yes, a couple of aspects that I want to touch upon. First, Trump saying that he wants Iran to completely give up on nuclear weapons. He wants a real end to the conflict. He also wants Iran to reach out. Do you think Tehran will reach out?
Well, one would hope so. It would be certainly in the best interest of the Iranian people if Iran did so. No one likes to see the level of destruction that will be inflicted upon Iran to date, but also going forward if it does not. One would hope also that, in accordance with President Trump's broad vision, that whatever agreement comes out of this military campaign would have more of a lasting impact. So if you go back to some of the original criticisms of the JCPOA, that Obama-era deal that Republicans like Trump were making back then, is that, well, that would only curb Iranian nuclear enrichment for 10 years. Trump presumably would want a more lasting agreement that doesn't have those sunset provisions. Trump also criticized the fact that the missile program was not included in that deal. The missiles are what would be the delivery mechanism for an Iranian nuclear weapon. Hopefully that would be included in that deal as well. And it also, that a previous agreement didn't include anything about Iranian proxies either, which have been one of these sources of instability in the region. And so presumably President Trump would like to see that included in the deal as well. So that's probably what he's envisioning when he thinks as a permanent end to these hostilities, rather than a temporary ceasefire, which will only reignite at some point in the not so distant future.
Right. Israel will need America's bunker buster bombs to target Iran's Fordo nuclear site. You did briefly touch upon that as well. So would that mean that America's involvement, if Israel has to fully achieve those objectives, is inevitable at this point? And do you see any scope of diplomacy here onwards?
No, I don't think it's inevitable. Destroying Fordos through bunker buster bombs is certainly an easier and more direct way to do it. There are other methods to go after Fordo that wouldn't necessarily involve direct American military involvement. There's some talk about, could you use special operations forces to neutralize the site? Could you use cyber to neutralize the site? Can you do a variety of other sort of improvised ways to help go after that facility? So it's not a foregone conclusion that the United States directly gets involved. Now, moreover, I think you could also hope that the Iranian regime takes an off-ramp and decides to dismantle its nuclear program without military force. And he says, this is a time where it doesn't make sense to continue going on. And if you go down the path of having to have the United States, potentially, but certainly Israel, destroy every last facility, that's actually not in the regime's best interest. Hopefully they take that diplomatic off-ramp and get to a somewhat better diplomatic deal than what was previously on the table. But ultimately that's on the Iranian regime to decide.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us with those perspectives.